Philanthropy's first webinar in the Learning to Break Barriers webinar series. We're grateful tonight to our panelists who are joining us to help us kick off these important conversations. Because of your generous support, Women in Philanthropy continues to grow, and we're now ready to explore new areas of impact in 2021 that support the changing needs of women, girls, and their families across our region. Women in Philanthropy began in 2014 at a strategic roundtable of 12 women gathered together to explore impactful ways to help low to moderate income women and girls overcome barriers and lift themselves out of poverty and disempowerment. It was that strategic planning table that our work together began to transform lives in the region. In the 4 impact areas of entrepreneurship, financial confidence, healthcare, and STEAM education. With the extraordinary generosity of over 100 WIP supporters, we've been able to make critical impact on the lives of women and girls and their families since WIP's inception. Some of these highlights include a total of 35 microloans and hardship grants provided to support local women entrepreneurs, 57 women saving a total of $262,000 through a match savings program, 4,000 students in Lackawanna County public school districts provided with STEAM education through the Salvadori program, and $25,000 in STEAM Star scholarships through the Level Up program at Lackawanna College, which translates to an overall cost savings of $150,000. In an effort to remain barrier breakers, we come back to the process that we started 7 years ago to make sure we're remaining visionaries and catalysts to make regional change happen. Our first webinar in this series tonight will take a look at the state of civic engagement and advocacy for women in our communities. Civic engagement and advocacy was one of 3 key priority areas that scored the highest in a late 2020 survey provided to WIP supporters asked to consider potential new priority areas for WIP. Along with the strong indication to maintain certain priority areas that we're already working on together, there was a clear desire to explore these new potential opportunities for investment. In addition to civic engagement and advocacy, WIP supporters chose the areas of affordable housing, affordable and competent childcare too, which we'll do in subsequent webinars. So each webinar in this series will include a panel discussion featuring regional leaders offering diverse perspectives. For example, tonight, the first session for civic engagement and advocacy will lay the groundwork for future discussions. And the follow-up webinar will include examples of solution-focused models to consider as we work together to address concerns that were raised tonight and in other first sessions. So please note, after tonight's panel discussion, we're going to open up the floor for Q&A as well as for any comments that the panelists want to make that we didn't get to address. So without further ado, I'm just going to introduce our esteemed panel, who we're very grateful has taken the time out of their busy schedules to join with us tonight. I'll read a little bit about their bios, and then obviously they can talk about whatever they want to specifically to their work during the conversation. Amber Loomis is with us tonight. She serves as Director of Development and Community Relations for the Oosterhout Free Library. Prior to that, she's worked as a development professional for various other organizations in the region. She serves on leadership roles in a variety of regional boards, including her role on the board of directors for the NEPA Rainbow Alliance, whose mission is to provide education, support, and advocacy for LGBTQA+ individuals and their families. Welcome, Amber. Andrea Mulrine is the current treasurer and past president of Scranton Tomorrow, a nonprofit civic and economic development organization. She's currently a board member and secretary for the League of Women Voters of Lackawanna County and past president of both the League of Women Voters of Lackawanna County and the League of Women Voters of Pennsylvania. She served on multiple governance and advisory boards in the region. She's a WIP supporter, and in her professional life, she's a project manager at Geisinger Commonwealth School of Medicine. Glynis Johns is the founder of Black Scranton Project, a nonprofit organization, local heritage initiative, and public history venture dedicated to archiving and celebrating Black history of Scranton and northeastern Pennsylvania. She's a sociologist, an advocate, an artist, and a historian, and studies 19th and 20th century African American history. Recently, in February, Glynis was honored by Senator Bob Casey as a distinguished Black leader of Pennsylvania and leading activist. Congratulations, Glynis. Heather Rhodes is a business owner in the Scranton region, owning In the Name of Hair, and she serves as a master stylist and colorist for House of Style by Kim. She's a community advocate with multiple leadership roles, including Scranton City Citizens HUD Advisory Council, the NAACP Organizing Charter Committee, and the Northeastern Pennsylvania Black Chamber of Commerce, including many other community groups. Jenny Gonzalez is a licensed social worker at the Community Justice Project, where she advocates for immigrant civil rights and issues of equity. She also works for Marywood University, where she helped to develop and kick off the STARS program, which provides tutoring and college readiness for Latinx families in the Scranton area. So enough into the conversation we go. So first I'm going to start by asking Andrea to kick off our discussion for us.
Laura, I think you forgot to introduce me.
Yeah, I was just about to interrupt. We want to introduce Sarah Cruz as well.
Oh my, Sarah, I don't have your bio in front of me. How embarrassing. I apologize. So let me go off the cuff and then I'll turn it over to Sarah. Sarah Cruz is on the Scranton School Board, where she has taken a key leadership role at such the important work that is going on in the Scranton School District, serving so many students in our region, the largest school district in Lackawanna County. She's a community leader, a community activist, and a professional, well-known and well-respected in the community. So Sarah, if I've missed anything, please feel free to jump in.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Yeah, so in my professional life, I'm a sales associate at Boscov's department store in downtown Scranton. I'm also an active volunteer with the Junior League of Scranton, and I'm also an active supporter of the local art community, being a supporter of the Scranton Fringe Festival, First Fridays, and the like.
Wonderful, Sarah. My apologies. So next I'm going to kick right into the discussion, and I'm going to start by asking Andrea Mulrine to kick it off for us. And first, I'm going to ask Andrea, can you talk a little bit about what the terms civic engagement and advocacy mean to you, based on your work and related experiences?
Thank you, Laura, and thanks for the invitation to be here tonight among such an esteemed group of women. It's great to be here and to see you all virtually. Looking forward to seeing everyone face to face at hopefully sometime in the future, near future. Civic engagement can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. It can be as simple as paying attention to the candidates who are running for public office, so that you understand what they stand for and what their job is, what their role is in the elected office. That's civic engagement. You can, go deeper, and as many of us have, and serve in volunteer capacities on a whole host of organizations, depending on what your passions are. And that's when people ask me, about how do you get involved? It's like, follow your passion, find out what's of interest to you, and that's how you make a difference, and that's how you become involved. Advocacy for me is a little bit different than civic engagement, because advocacy is more about standing up for your opinion on a particular issue. So it is getting involved in an issues-based organization, or starting an issues-based organization and pushing forth what your platform is, or helping to push forth a platform. So can be a lot of different things. Civic engagement, though, for me, I think one of the things that is so sad today is that there is no civic education in schools anymore. And, even asking people on the street, if you had X, Y, or Z problem, which branch of the government would you go to have, to help you solve that particular problem? So many people don't know, they don't understand what our government does. And you can't affect change if you don't understand what government does. So that to me is a critical part of what we try to do with the League of Women Voters. So thanks for the opportunity to talk about it.
Thanks, Andrea. I think it's an important distinction, and it's something that comes up a lot. So I'm glad you clarified it for us. Next, I'll move over to Heather. and I'll ask you if you could talk a little bit from your perspective and your experience, what meanings the term civic engagement and advocacy have to you.
Sure. First, thank you for having me and being a part of this panel discussion. I really appreciate the consideration. So I'll get right into my piece. Civic engagement to me is anything from boots on the ground all the way up to what Andrea mentioned before, dealing with politics and understanding their relationships. It can go from voter outreach to, I had an experience where we helped a community member transport voters to the polling locations. I took part in mutual aid marketplaces, volunteering, and I recently did a book drive. So for me, civic engagement is just a vast spread of being involved in your community, inserting yourself and connecting others to be inserted as well. And then advocacy for me, I believe it's a way to amplify the voices of people in the community, those who are voiceless, and then also those who are already having those voices, somebody like Glynis, who's also on the panel, standing beside them and supporting their decisions and their opinions and their initiatives that are getting out there. And we do that in ways through social media is the biggest one right now because of the pandemic, getting it out in the newsprint media, having meetings with local officials, public officials, school board members, and just groups of people who are willing to get behind ideas and concerns and anything that's going to move a community forward. Thank you.
So amplification and support, and such a wonderful distinction that you laid out. And you know, Heather, you referred to Glynis, and I'm going to then move and switch gears a little bit and ask Glynis, from your perspective, what do you believe are successful advocacy skills, and where do you see the barriers in developing these capabilities based on your work?
So one thing that I think is a tool for advocacy is the ability to set aside your fears and to speak up for whatever it is that you are advocating for or seeking justice to. In my experience, being a local Black woman, girl from this area, there's a lot of pressures and there's a lot of things that make you feel like your voice doesn't matter, or you don't have the ability to ask questions, or your suggestions for change are not valid. But you have to set aside that and just speak your truth and speak your mind towards whatever it is. And I think that's a huge barrier, the silencing of voices, and to find your own voice and find the confidence and leaning on those people to do that. I know for me, that was one thing. Just the second I told myself, like, I have questions, like I want to know answers to certain things. Like Andrea was saying, we don't really learn about civic advocacy. We don't really learn about how government works or where to get those questions or answers from. So for me, I realized I don't know these things. Where can I go? Who do I know answers questions? City council does. So I started going to city council meetings, asking the questions that I needed answers to, or asking them to help me find those answers. And so that kind of snowballed into more advocacy, finding my voice, learning questions, learning what parts of governments do what, who has the phone numbers or who has those resources. So the moment that you set aside that fear to start putting yourself out there, I think that is like the number one thing that you can do to start breaking barriers.
The confidence building is something I think we've heard a lot about in a lot of the issues that we've tried to tackle. And, you know, I'm not surprised that you're bringing that up now as something that's so critical with this. Jenny, what do you feel are the barriers in terms of successful advocacy skill development based on your work?
Yeah, so one of the major barriers in my line of work with the community that I have served is the language barrier. It goes back to what Glynis was saying. You can really prepare the community you're working with, you know, give them that self-confidence, the tools, the resources to advocate for themselves, their family members, their community members. But if they don't have access to certain institutions or agencies or organizations that are meant to provide certain services or help, then that's going to be a major setback for a community. Because if they did have that confidence, and I've seen this from experience, the moment they encounter that there is no access, the moment they walk in those doors, that they can't communicate with anybody, then that there is going to set back not only that family, that individual, but the remainder of their community. In terms of successful advocacy skills that have worked for me, again, and with the community that I work with, and that I continue to have to consciously remind myself to work on, is reflective listening. Oftentimes I get so passionate about certain things, especially that have to do with inequities, injustices in different systems and institutions, that I jump to conclusions, or I assume, okay, based on my past professional experiences, these are the things that I would recommend so that I can better advocate for you, your family, or your community, or to empower you to better advocate for yourselves. But we can get lost, you know, in that thinking, because again, of that passion of like, you just want to get things done. And so for me, it has been reflectively listening and empathetically understanding and responding to the community's needs, because ultimately that goes back to respecting the autonomy of the community and what they think is best for them. So for me, that has been one of the advocacy skills that I have had to continuously work on, and learn more how to become a better advocate through that. And the other thing I just wanted to mention was developing community partnerships. That has been so important in the work that I have done, because obviously it promotes growth and a welcoming environment, not only for an established community here, but for the people that are coming to this area. And that has really enabled me in my agency to be able to bring to the table some of the most underserved populations in the area, to talk to the very institutions and agencies that oftentimes have some of those gaps or inequities that prevent these community members from getting the services they need. So the community partnership is so important when it comes to advocating for whoever it is that you're advocating for.
Thank you for that insight on the importance of community partnership and keeping building inclusivity, and when we're working towards that. I'm going to go next to Amber, and Amber, I'm hoping that you could talk a little bit from your work and your background, what you think characterizes successful advocacy skills and where the barriers lie.
Sure. So I can't echo enough what Jenny and Glynis said. But, you know, I think from my perspective, those successful traits include being, you know, a great listener, being passionate, inspiring, empowering, mindful, and, you know, having that desire to make a difference. As far as the barriers though, I'd say for me, in my experience, it's education. You know, we live in a very traditional community, and while we have come a very long way, there is still a lot of work to do. With the NEPA Rainbow Alliance, we're trying to combat that by bringing education into the schools and into the workplace. We want to educate all community members on the LGBTQ+ community, which is always evolving. And we want to teach, mindfulness, kindness, and respect to everyone, so there are more allies and more advocates and less bullies. We have also recently added a coming out resource page to our website, and I did put that website in the communication there on the side. But we added this resource page to our website. That way we can educate the public on, for instance, why someone is coming out, but also this has been a really vital resource for individuals who are looking for information on how to come out.
Wonderful. Thank you. One of the things I want to do is open it up to the rest of the panel to talk about, you know, what you feel might be some of the key skills and the barriers that maybe weren't addressed. Maybe it means they were all covered.
I would say, if you don't mind me adding, I would say having the flexibility of dealing with different personalities, and like Jenny mentioned, you know, having to understand what the community needs and wants, and being able to be flexible in that, and not to have your own biases inserted into the equations. So just a little bit more to build on what Jenny was saying.
Thank you for that important insight.
So Laura, I think, you know, one of the things when the League of Women Voters partners with Ready to Run at the University of Scranton to run campaign school for women who want to run for public office or thinking of running for public office. And one of the things that we've come across in the research that we've done is that women very often don't think they're ready to do something, that they're not, you know, if you took a man and a woman side by side and you said, you know, I think you should run for Sarah, you know, I think you should run for school board. The man is going to say, oh yeah, I think that's a great idea. And the woman is going to go, oh wait, I haven't prepared enough to do it. Don't hold yourself back from, have courage to move forward, and don't let anybody tell you that you're not ready to do something. It's all a big learning experience as far as I'm concerned. The League of Women Voters has been, it's been an education in and of itself for me. If anybody told me that I would understand government as much as I understand it now, I would, you know, if I said that to me 20 years ago, I would have laughed at them. But it's through my involvement with the League that I've learned so much. And just, you know what, if you have that passion, if you're really interested in something, go for it, find a way to become involved, and don't let anybody stop you. Don't let anybody tell you no. I think that no, that fear, that's a big stoppage, and that's something to get over. And it's something that everybody has inside themselves to get over that. So that's my 2 cents.
So just to follow up on that, please go ahead.
So Andrea, it's you know what you just said, you weren't talking theory, you were talking what actually happened. So 2 years ago, in November of 2018, there was a vacancy on the school board, and I was encouraged to run, and there was 12 people in that room. Glynis, you were one of them. We like sat across from each other waiting for the other applicants to interview, and that whole process of putting in my resume and coming up with a cover letter and thinking about standing before the 8 members plus the then superintendent and everybody in that room was terrifying, because I had always been a supporter of other people's campaigns, of other people's work in the community. I always saw myself as somebody on the sideline, as a cheerleader, but for me to actually be that person standing in the gap and putting myself out there was terrifying. And as a woman of color, as a woman who grew up in a low-income single mother household, I was like, oh no, like there's never been somebody like me in that position, and there wasn't anybody who I saw as paving the way. So it really took a lot of encouragement for me to do that. So yeah.
Sarah, I'm glad you shared that, because, you know, just keeping the focus on the barriers to overcome. Can you talk a little bit about, you know, digging a little deeper into what you were just saying about some of the obstacles that you believe women and other marginalized groups experience when advocating for themselves?
Yeah. So first of all, they're told that they're too sensitive, that that whatever it is that they're feeling, whatever it is that they feel is an issue or something that needs to be addressed, that it's all in their head, that just because you're feeling it because it was directly about you, but it didn't make an impact on me, so it wasn't that big of a deal. And I think sometimes people can't see beyond their own implicit biases and their own like comfort level to see another person's perspective. And I think it takes a lot of overcoming fear, intimidation, potentially associations with friends or family to really see that person and what they're trying to say. I think also a lot of times people will brush it off as, if it's a woman, oh, she's just playing the woman card. She's just using her gender to say what's wrong. Or if it's a person of color, they'll say, oh, that person's just playing the race card for the same reason. And those two things combined, a woman of color, it's even worse, because now you're doubly trying to start trouble, but you're just trying to affect change.
Yeah, I can add on to like what Sarah was saying. Some of the biggest obstacles for me, I get a lot of who do you think you are kind of things happening for a long time. And honestly, still now, it's like, who do you think you are? You're a young Black girl. well, young Black woman, how do you think you know how to navigate these spaces? Or how do you think you know what is best? And then on the other flip side of that, having multiple degrees, it's like, okay, so you think you're smarter than other people, or how do you think your degrees will then allow you to then navigate these spaces? So for me, it's always having to combat those things and having to prove myself and my worth constantly over. So that's a really huge obstacle for me, being turned down for every job in the city practically. Now that people know who I am, now they all want to hire me when my resume has not changed. So for me, it's just a lot of like having to prove myself. And again, a lot of people don't already take Black women seriously. So I'm on a lot of times having to speak for myself because I also am that identity. So it's like, I know these things that women are going through. And then a lot of times when you express those things, you get a lot of like pushback from people that, again, like Sarah was saying, that implicit bias, don't believe their own bias, or get triggered when you say, that is a microaggression, or that's discrimination, or that's sexism. All of those things compiled onto your identity is frustrating. And it's also very tiring. And you sometimes feel small and you feel like you're in this by yourself. It's overwhelming. And a lot of times these systems are in place to continue to break you down. So that way you get so tired down, you get so worn down that you don't do it anymore. Because a lot of people don't want to see things change. There's still a lot of people that don't want to see women taking positions of power, don't want to see Black women out here changing the narrative, do not want to see the Latinx community take up space, have businesses, be part of the community and all those things. And so like we probably have all experienced that, having to do that pushback. And so that is one of the biggest obstacles for me, is just having to like prove myself or show my worth. But I've gotten to the point now where it's just like, I'm still going to do what I think is right regardless. And I have learned from experience that if you are moving in the realm of truth, in the lane of truth, no matter if you win or fail, it's still not really a loss, because you still are doing something that's positive and productive for the community. And even if you don't think you made any change, you've definitely made an impact to somebody. So those are what I've experienced over the past handful of years.
Thank you for sharing that. Jenny, can I ask you if you would talk a little bit about your perspective on the obstacles that women and other marginalized groups encounter when doing that self-advocacy?
Yes, of course. I agree with everything Sarah and Glynis were saying. That constant having to prove yourself is something that I see that I live through, and it really has impacted not only for myself, and I speak this from my own personal experience and from my professional experience in working with immigrant and refugee women, but also being the daughter of an immigrant woman and the way I was raised. I can tell you that having to prove yourself really sometimes creates this issue of trusting your gut feeling, trusting yourself, trusting your voice, questioning everything, because again, all you're doing is you feel like you're proving yourself every single day. And with that trust of trusting not only myself, but also seeing if you are trying to self-advocate for yourself, whether it's by going to an organization or a government agency, but you already know that that agency or organization didn't treat somebody in your community well, there's already a trust issue right then and there. And that's a major barrier when it comes to women self-advocating, and especially, in my opinion, immigrant women. And I'm not speaking for all immigrant women, but this is based on the experience, my personal experience, not myself as an immigrant, but as a child of an immigrant woman, and based on my experience with the work that I do with immigrant women and refugee women, not trusting institutions and processes that are completely foreign to you, because there's the cultural clashes, there's the language barriers. And then on top of that, if somebody in your community is saying, I didn't have a good experience, that will deter many women from seeking out services or from self-advocating for whatever their wants or needs are, because there's already that lack of trust. I also work with a lot of immigrant victims of crime, many of whom are women. Not all of them are women, but I can tell you that there is a legitimate fear of immigration retaliation. That is something that we are seeing, I've seen all my life and within my family, but even now more than ever, under for a lot of political reasons. But, there's a lot of fear among women for immigration retaliation when it comes to, self-advocating for themselves, when it comes to leaving abusive circumstances or relationships, because there's a fear of deportation. There's a fear that if I share too much of my burdens and challenges with an institution or an agency that's meant to help me, am I going to be seen as a burden or as a public charge? Even if that agency is a nonprofit organization that has no link to government agencies or immigration, but there is that association in many cases. And again, and that fear of, if I share too much with organizations, even with me at my agency, I'll get like, I don't want to share too much because I don't want to be seen as incapable of taking care of my children because I'm too weak, or I'm not strong enough, or I'm going through too much. So those are major barriers that I see many women of color, many immigrant and refugee women, and that's based on my personal experience and the professional experience.
Thank you. Does any other panelists want to offer any more insight that might be different? Well, we'll keep on that theme of making sure that we keep an equity lens in the issue when we're looking at it. So I'm going to switch over to Heather now. If you could talk a little bit about how you believe advocacy and civic engagement can be made more inclusive. What needs to happen?
When Jenny mentioned how she kind of gets in and deals with people one-to-one, I think canvassing, that's something that we did when I started to organize for the NAACP. We went down to the public location. So we were down at the courthouse square. We went down by Taylor, that shopping plaza. We were up in Dixon City, and we were talking to people out in the community. What is it you feel unsafe with? What can we do to change the community? How do you want to see it done? And really getting surveying what the people need and want. And that's, I feel like I was able to expose myself to people that wouldn't necessarily have spoken up if I didn't go to them and approach them. And now they're right alongside with me in these meetings and advocating alongside of me. So as long as you are being the change that you want to see, other people will be inspired by that. The power of suggestion is amazing. Just even putting a Facebook post out there, and then being that person that is a representation. So Glynis was actually the person for me. She was my representation that I needed to see. I needed to see someone like, you're not regular by any means, but when I first saw you, I just thought you were regular. I didn't even look into you. And I'm like, look at this girl. Like, I came on Facebook Live in my pajamas, my face, no makeup. And I was like, oh my God, this girl is doing amazing things. We have to get behind her. And like, I threw a donation tab on my thing, and I started raising money for Black Scranton Project. And that, for me, was the catalyst for everything I'm doing, even right now today, was seeing that representation of a Black woman speaking her mind and not being afraid to do it. So that's another way. And then being engaged in the community town halls, community forums, the group pages that they have out there. Scranton has their 311, which Amber Viola, who's the HR director, she kind of fields some of that information and brings us all together with people that have concerns, roundtables, community events. I mean, there's ample ways to be more inclusive. I think that face-to-face experience, understanding somebody and being able to relate to them in some way, somehow, is the best way to bring inclusivity and more engagement in a community like ours.
Well said. Thank you for sharing that with us. Can I ask Amber if you'd like to share a little bit about how you believe inclusivity and accessibility can become a key part of advocacy and civic engagement?
Sure. And I just want to echo the social media comment too. I mean, social media is such a huge aspect of all of our lives now, right? So I mean, we can really use that tool for so much good. And I think especially over these last couple of years and last several months, especially, we really have noticed that coming out of the woodwork, and just people really, sharing their thoughts, sharing their voices, raising funds for causes that they're passionate about. And it's just a really nice thing to see. I'd have to say, thinking about the community as a whole while developing these events and engagements, we have to make sure that they're welcoming to everyone everyone. I know one way that the NEPA Rainbow Alliance has addressed this is by having our annual Pride event. While last year and most likely this year, we'll have to pivot to a more virtual platform due to the pandemic. In 2019, we hosted a Pride in the Park event, and this was a free educational event with not only resources for the LGBTQ plus community, but for the entire community at large. So for instance, booths were set up for healthcare services such as STD testing, which is a valuable service for everybody. We really try to market this event as a way to not only raise awareness for that community, but to bring the community members together. So in 2019, there were over 1,000 community members that came out in attendance for this event. And, you know, I feel that those that maybe weren't so familiar with LGBTQ plus community maybe left there thinking, you know, like, hey, you know what, we're not so different. And I very vividly remember having an individual come up to me at the end of the event and was in tears and was just saying, you know, like my son just came out recently and I didn't know what to do. And he was upset. He was just so upset with himself that he didn't handle it the right way. He didn't feel like he was that father figure that his child needed in that moment in time. And it wasn't even for malicious reasons. It was just because he just genuinely just didn't understand. And by him coming to that event, that Pride event in the park in Wilkes-Barre, he really learned a lot. And he was just, you know, just so thankful that event happened, and I was able to educate him and help him move forward with his child and to strengthen that relationship and just get a better understanding. And I think that's a huge problem. Again, just going back to the education piece, it's just, you know, people that don't understand things, it's not always coming from a malicious place. It's just coming from a place of just really just not understanding. And I think if we can do a better job at kind of providing that educational piece in these outreach events that we have throughout the community, I think we'd be doing a lot of good.
Wonderful example. Thank you. And now I'll turn it over to see if anyone else would like to share your perspectives on how we can better apply an equity lens to advocacy and civic engagement.
I'll jump in here. I think in my experience now working with like companies, organizations, institutions, and the like, what I found is a lot of these places don't take the time to take a step back and like spread the cards out and see where they're lacking, where they're missing, right? And a lot of times their diversity and inclusion is still coming from a white lens and coming from a space where they don't necessarily see everything. And so I always tell those organizations and things like, you need to step out into the community. You need to make yourself a little bit uncomfortable, because if you're talking about inclusivity and we're talking about diversity and equity, the people who are in those marginalized spaces, the ones that are facing the oppression, they're already uncomfortable. Their life is based on being uncomfortable. And so for the people that have the privilege, you need to take that step and use your privilege to then move towards those people. Because I think a lot of times in the work that I do, when people come to me, it's like they're waiting for the marginalized people to like crawl out of these like corners and then come to them once they like, you know, say, hey, like, we're trying to be more diverse, you know, like, you know, that's a good start to say like, you know, we're trying to work on it. But I think the people that have the resources, the access, the ability to do those things, to try and reshape their companies, organizations, businesses, institutions, whatever, you need to take that step to put yourself in an uncomfortable spaces and then meet those people where they're at, because a lot of these bigger orgs don't take the time to meet people where they're at and find out where people are at, or use their resources and their research capabilities to figure that part out. It's always like, well, we don't know. And it just kind of feels like, how do you not know? I don't know, to a degree. I mean, I can't say that for everything, but you'd be shocked by some of these bigger organizations, companies that literally act like they have no idea how people feel marginalized or feel not included in whatever their business plans or marketing looks like. So that's what I would say. If there's any like, you know, people that are thinking about that, who are in these positions that are doing those things, take some time, maybe 30 minutes a day, or schedule a day in your work schedule to really get on the internet, look and see what's going on, check out resources, look at forums, look at posts. Like, people are doing so much now now, it's honestly a few clicks away to finding what that is, looking at different strategies and models, so that way you can make your business model more inclusive and being able to find ways to get those people. And then also, like, if you need help, just like also let people know that you're looking for help. And now there's so many people who are training and or have trained to be in the positions to make these types of spaces more equitable and diverse. So just that for
guidance.
Can I just add, everything you just said, that all of you were just saying, I totally agree with. I think that we really need to stop putting that burden of inclusivity on these marginalized communities. That burden isn't just on them, it's on mainstream society. And I have to say that I've gotten many questions about how do we include more of the Latinx community or of the immigrant communities or the refugee communities. And my response is always, well, you know, what is your community-based response? You know, what are you doing to get out there? What you were saying, Glynis, you have to be you have to be uncomfortable with doing outreach in creative ways. Not have this expectation that people are going to be coming to your door when there is no representation of different community members. These people are not going to be knocking on your doors. No, it is the burden on us to be going out to the communities. I have gone to reach out and do outreach or information sessions on different topics, civil rights, public benefits, housing, whatever it is, in people's living rooms. I have gone out to parks where, because people don't feel comfortable having it in their homes, in mobile home park, literally the parks that are around the mobile home parks, to talk to families about, you know, their rights or whatever it is that we're talking about, churches or, you know, places of worship. We have to be creative on how, you know, and explore the different models to be able to do this outreach and be more inclusive of different members of the community. You know, we can't always just sit back and expect that these people are somehow going to find out about our services or whatever it is that we're offering. It takes much more than that. So everything you guys were saying, I completely agree with.
Yeah. I concur with Jenny and Glynis. I think the number one thing that people who truly want to learn about how they can be better people and be more equitable in their personal and professional lives is, number one, to educate themselves, to look at the books that are talking about the issues of today, to look at videos, to read articles, to talk to people who are marginalized and to understand where they're coming from, and to also look at the words that they're using. I know a lot of people say, I don't see color. Well, color exists. We're Hispanic, we're Black, we're Asian, we're richly diverse, and it needs to be changed from I don't see color to I see your color and I value it and I see the worth in it and I see why it's so important that your ethnicity, that your heritage is celebrated the same as mine.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm going to stick with you for the next question. And I'm curious, you know, we're going to stay with civic engagement for a moment. And I'm going to say, you know, if you think about, you know, your own personal experiences, how do you feel that we can best support women's engagement in the civic space, the voting process, and particularly in running for office, from your background?
Yeah, so I think in terms of, first of all, women, the importance of women voting, definitely going where they are in their communities, where they're working, where they live. For women who are bilingual or who don't speak English, having candidates who print not only campaign literature in English, but also in Spanish. I know last year there was only one candidate for mayor who had campaign literature in Spanish, and that was just so phenomenal to me that in the city of Scranton in 2019, only one candidate, after I believe in 7 or 8 candidates, had bilingual literature. So and then also knowing where they should vote, because I know this year a lot of places were changed, they were consolidated. So advertising that, where they're voting, what's the deadlines to register to vote, that they can also vote either in person or through mail-in ballot. And then in running for office, what I spoke earlier when Andrea was speaking, encourage them, motivate them, inspire them, guide them. What you were saying is that a lot of times women don't feel like they're ready. They don't feel like they can run for office. That's what I felt. And even today, being a sitting elected official, I still feel like, what am I doing here? I sometimes struggle with imposter syndrome. So I think definitely standing shoulder to shoulder with them, encouraging them and making them feel that they can make a difference, that their voice matters.
Thank you. And you referred to Andrea and some of Andrea's comments before. Andrea, can you follow up a little bit on your perspective of how we can best support women's engagement, both in the voting process and particularly running for office?
Sure. I think the voting process starts at home. So I think everyone, whether it's your children, your grandchildren, your nieces and nephews, it's talking to everyone around you about the importance of voting, why it's a privilege. For women, there was a war that was fought to give women the right to vote. There's no other way to describe it. It was a long war before women got the right to vote. So we need to appreciate it and make sure that we do vote. You know, so many people believe that primary elections are throwaway elections. And I always have a soapbox on this one, because so many times in municipal elections, so when you're electing your school directors, your city council members, those decisions in areas such as Scranton that is so heavily skewed for one party versus the other, so many times the decisions on those elections are made in the primary and not in the general. They're already done by the time it gets to the general election. So critically important to pay attention and to vote in the primary election. So that's the first thing, is just educating everybody around you. Talk about, you know, have it part of your conversation, whether it's your dinner conversation or your phone call with your sister. You know, have a conversation about what's on the ballot, and you know, how do you feel about that, and what are the issues that pertain to that particular office. It's not something you can do in 30 seconds the night before or right before you walk out the door to go to vote. Being an informed and engaged voter takes a little more effort than that. So that's my first thing. And as far as, you know, the advocacy part, I agree with what Sarah is saying. You know, support people, encourage them to get out there. The league is, you know, we do a campaign school. We just did it in January. We work with the University of Scranton on Ready to Run, which is geared specifically toward women. Campaign school is open to everybody. And not that men can't attend Ready to Run, they certainly can, but the conversation is geared around women. But it's really just about running for office. Everybody thinks is some big mysterious thing, and it's not. It takes courage, don't get me wrong. And Sarah, congratulations on that. It takes a lot of courage to put your name in the ring and get out there. But everybody thinks that it's this big mysterious thing. It's about having a plan and executing on the plan. There certainly is an art to running for office, and that's that people engagement and being able to, back in the day, shake hands, now connect with people virtually. So, you know, it certainly is that. But on the other hand, there's also a science to running for office. There is a way to put together a plan and execute on the plan, and you'll be successful. So, you know, it's those kinds of things that are critically important. Let people know. There's a lot of resources out there for people who want to run for office. And always I hold up the Lackawanna County voter office, because they're tremendous in helping people with whatever they need in terms of understanding, you know, street lists or how to fill out the paperwork, all of those kinds of things that are important to getting on the ballot. Your local office, your county office, is there for you to help you with that.
Can I just chime in really quick and say, Andrea, I think everything that you do for the League of Women Voters is incredible. I go to all of the debates at the U when we were able to be there. And I always thought you like moderate them so incredibly and you keep people on task. And I learn a lot from you every single time and learn a lot from the candidates. So thank you for always organize those and keeping them everybody on task. And you know, sometimes they get a little heated, but you always keep everybody in check. So I just wanted to shout you out on that because I've been going to the debates probably since about 2015. So
thank you. We appreciate that. Thank you. And we invite everyone to join the league.
Absolutely. Anyone else want to weigh in on the question about, you know, how we can help support women at a greater level in the voting process and in running for office?
If you don't mind, I chime in. For me, this was the first year I ever voted. Don't crucify me. And the reason for that was because
too late to start.
it was the first time I learned what the impact was if I didn't. I wasn't aware of what would happen with my vote if I didn't use it. And that is what motivated me to vote, because it didn't, you hear all these stories and all this rhetoric and narratives behind your vote doesn't count and it's only this and it's only that. But when you connect the ideas of not voting and what that really means and how that's not just going to impact you, but your children and their children and your whole community. I think making sure people understand what happens when you don't vote is extremely important. We did a presentation with Lackawanna College for voter outreach, and it was specifically on the impacts of not voting and why you should vote. So for me, that was my vessel, my driving factor to get out there and vote.
Heather, congratulations on voting. Way to go.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that with us. Anybody else want to weigh in?
I just wanted to say that I didn't start voting, and not when I turned 18, a few years after that, because of the same reasons. I actually had no idea, like, where do I even register to vote? Where do I go to vote? Again, had no idea how any of this worked because nobody in my family ever voted for a lot of reasons. A lot of them were unable to vote even if they wanted to. I have to say that in the last 3 or 4 years, my mother, who does not speak English, I have gotten her to vote as a new U.S. citizen. And again, that would not happen. I know, I'm so proud of her. Thank you. That would not happen if I was not in her life. Because she says, yeah, I'm a US citizen. That was my dream my entire life. You know, if I come to this country, I was undocumented. I went through all these years of being undocumented. I'm finally a US citizen. So I would say, okay, now we're going to go vote. And she's like, I don't even know, like, who do we vote for? Going back to campaigns being only in English, for things, everything just being in English. Yes, she's a US citizen. Yes, she passed her civic engagement test, which requires some English, but that's basic English. It is so important. There are so many women out there who are eligible to vote, who do not speak English as their first language, and just the language barrier alone has prevented them from, you know, going to register to vote, and once they're actually registered, okay, now what? Because everything comes to you in English. Everything that's mailed to you, the majority is in English, at least in this area. So again, a lot of times that is what has prevented so many people from voting. And again, like I say, my mother tells me all the time, if it wasn't for you, I would not be voting. I would not vote. I would not know what's happening. But it's because I'm having those conversations. I'm saying, come on, I'm going to pick you up and I'm going to take you to your voting booth. And I'm the one that is interpreting, translating, this is what this means, this is what it says, you know, how to fill it out, how not to fill it out, where to put it in, you know, whatever it is. But that's just something to keep in mind.
Wonderful. We have a lot of people that have questions. They're coming in through the chat, they're coming in through Q&A. So, you know, my last question for you is going to be, we really want to know from your perspective, from every panelist perspective, you know, what do you feel Women in Philanthropy can do to help women in our region participate more fully in advocacy and civic engagement? And so I definitely would like you to think about that before we end today, but I really don't want to hold hold off the questions anymore because we want people to be engaged.
And that was one of the questions, Laura. And I
Good,
we
good.
could start with Glynis and Sarah, because I know they have to jump off a couple minutes early. But Glynis, do you mind real quick, just how can women in philanthropy help?
Yeah, so I think women in philanthropy, just if you can donate, seeing if there's volunteer opportunities, sharing posts, liking things, amplifying voices. There's a lot of simple things that you can do. If there's any sort of sponsorships or partnerships, or even if like there are events that you've created and you just want to have them as like co-hosts or co-sponsors where they don't have to do much, because sometimes small orgs like Black Scranton Project and other orgs out here, we're small and we have a small team and we're doing a lot. And so when people ask us to like jump onto events, kind of like with Geisinger, that's what I'm doing next for this Black Women's Health Matters. My board member, who's part of Geisinger though, was like, hey, we have this opportunity to do things like Geisinger can like be a co-sponsor, we'll put it all together. You jump on, do this. And that's really helpful because not only do we get to reach a whole nother lens of people, also being involved with the health community and medical students and stuff, but we also aren't doing the whole brunt work of the organizing. We're just hopping on, engaging with people. And so I think kind of balancing that out and finding ways that you can take some slack off of these smaller orgs. There's so many different ways to help, but like some of the bare minimums, donating, sharing, commenting, liking, amplifying voices, all of those are incredible ways to help people out. And so just as a little shameless plug, I'm about to hop off because Black Scranton Project is in partnership with Geisinger and Geisinger School of Medicine for Black Women's Health Matters series. And today we have two speakers, Mrs. Frances Martinez Gibbons, who is part of the Alzheimer's Association. So she will be talking about that. And then we also have Sharon L. Lawrence, who is going to be talking about how mental health is physical health. And this is not just for Black women, it's for anyone. I feel like all the events we do, obviously we emphasize inclusivity and allyship and the like. So I'm gonna drop the Zoom link and stuff in the chat. So if anybody wants to come in, you're more than welcome because we will be over there. So that's the answer.
Well, good luck tonight, Glynis, and thank you for sharing that. Obviously, it's an important topic. We want to encourage people to go and to listen and to watch. And thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you. Can I just, sorry, before I go, I just wanted to answer this other question that I saw in the chat that I thought was a really great one. Catherine said, like, how do you get men in your community to be engaged and realizing that helping women's advocacy is helping them? And so when I heard that, I just pretty much thought about like Tupac's quote where he said, you know, I was raised from a woman, got my name from a woman and all these things. And so like, I think it's important to remember, like, you wouldn't be here without a woman. And so you should help the women around you. And I think it's really cool in terms of the Black Scranton Project, of different types of men have been showing up for women in terms of like events or something, offering safety, support, and a voice for those who don't, or just asking if you can be present in those space, or just letting them know like it's part of the community. So yeah, so I just think that is my answer, I guess, if that answers anything. But I feel like you just encourage people to get involved and say like, this is a community and it's not just for women. You can learn something here. I'm sure you have mothers, sisters, aunties, cousins, daughters, or whatever, who can benefit from that. And if they see you engaged, that looks really good to both your family and that. So I think like everybody has women around them that you probably will support and put your life in front of. And so with that in mind, I think you should just support the women around you.
Excellent, thank you. And if everybody could just do a quick smile, because our communications manager is going to take a quick screenshot. Lovely, thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Glynis. And Sarah, we'll turn it to you because I know you are also running short on time. Thank you, Glynis.
Yeah, I would reiterate what Glynis said. I mean, social media is so prevalent now, and it's the way that we're communicating with each other, that we're learning who each other is, that we're learning about the issues. I would say definitely read all that you can, do your research on the issues, share responsibly and ethically, and have good conversations with the people, not just in your group, but get out of your comfort zone and start begin to to connect with people who you normally wouldn't associate with and to learn from them, and then to figure out ways that you with what you have to offer can help them to become more engaged and to encourage them and support them, and then just come together and help each other out in that way.
And Sarah, I want to thank you for your service to the city and to the students of Scranton. I want to apologize for my bio gaffe earlier.
Okay. Thank you.
Any-
You so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. I want to make sure we're addressing other questions. Maggie, you want to talk about any more questions coming in, or are they visible?
Yeah, absolutely. So Glynis touched on the one question, which is how do we get the men in our community to be as engaged as you all are, realizing that helping the women advocacy is actually a help to them. So I think that's a great question to turn over. And also if you have additional thoughts, again, about how women in philanthropy and this group of women, engaged women looking to transform our community, what can we do?
I do have a thought I would like to add if I could. I think one thing that like us, as women, we need to educate each other, lift each other up instead of breaking each other down, move past that thought that there's only room for one woman at the table. If we could develop programs that teach us that we're not just there to check a box or fill a seat. And as women, we need to pave the way for all future women in our community. And so I just want to say that, whether you're straight, gay, bisexual, trans, we're not in competition and that we're in this together.
Great.
And if I can, so Laura, I think, and Maggie, I think this was a really great conversation. And for something that women in philanthropy can do is to support these types of things on a regular basis. So virtual, while is, I think we're all tired of Zoom at this point, it still is easy to get everybody together. It's easy to commit an hour of my time like this rather than having to go out to a meeting and prepare in advance and be out of the house, for hours at a time. So, this type of communication is really, really helpful. I've met women this evening that I didn't know. Jenny, I really appreciated what you said about language and barriers. I made a note, my next league meeting, we're going to talk about this. And, how can we help with something like that? Women in philanthropy perhaps could financially support efforts around that issue of translating things that we're doing. And I appreciate so much the comments that Sarah and Heather, that everybody has made about getting out of your comfort zone. And the only thing that I'll say about that is that life is really busy. And I don't always have the time to get out of my own comfort zone, to go out and seek you out. So anything that we can do to help bring groups of people together like this, excuse me, so that I can be exposed and I can hear what you're working on and I can understand better what your needs are. That's really helpful to me because I simply don't have the time to go out in the community to do it. I wish I did, but I don't. And yet what you're saying is critically important and I'm happy to be part of the solution, but I don't understand it and I haven't been exposed to it. And, partially on me, it just simply isn't a space that I'm in. So Laura bringing us together like this is really important because I got to hear things that I wouldn't have heard otherwise. So thank you. This was a good night for me.
And I'm glad you brought that up because that's what we're all about with WIP. We want to next move into solutions. What can we do? What have we heard? What are the barriers? What's been identified? How can we build those bridges and be that catalyst?
It looks like Heather wants to speak too. I think I see her unmuting and Heather, we've worked with you, through Women in Philanthropy in the past. So I'd love to hear your perspective on what we can do in this area.
So I was just thinking about my experiences with you at the Scranton Area Foundation. And I don't know if you guys have like a community liaison or a community relations person that can go out there specifically and find where those people are. Like Andrea mentioned, right? Like no one person is just going to do it. But if you have someone designated for that does already have those connections, knows how to make those connections and start building those relationships, because what you guys did for us for the that was historical for the Thanksgiving dinners with the critical needs grant, and maybe start developing programs specifically for certain things, for certain groups. And I know we kind of fell under that critical needs grant seamlessly, but that was huge. No one has ever done anything like that and considered it in that way. And without your help, we wouldn't have been, I mean, we would have been, but it would have been at our own personal expense. So for the community all by itself, like something like that, being able to have something already ready available for groups that are working on certain things. So we know, like, every holiday there's food giveaways, every time the school starts there's backpack giveaways, you know, and sort of just trying to connect with those people that are already doing that, with maybe one liaison in WIP that can do that, or several. I have this really great working relationship with you, Maggie. So I kind of reach out to you. I've hung on to you since I first met you. I'm like, oh, I like this woman, you know, very impressionable to me. So I was able to, and just being able to be approachable has been tremendously helpful, because there are people with resources, but if you feel like you can't say, or you don't know how, and you just can't approach, you really, you know, it's not going to be delivered in a way that's going to get you the result you're looking for. So I think being able to understand the community and learn the temperature and flow with all, I think all businesses have like a calendar of when things happen, you know, and just be on target of those things and try to figure out who you can delegate to find those people in those groups and those little marginalized portions of the community would be great, as far as what you guys can do. Because I think overall you're already doing it. So to me, I feel like there is a little bit more you could do, but I think, you know, you got a really great foundation where you've started. I mean, you're up in the University of Scranton with the WIP and getting the underserved population into, which I paid off my loan last week. I'm here early. I know, it's so exciting. I couldn't wait to tell you that. But so, you know, I think you guys really you really have a good foundation where you're starting from, and having these discussions like Andrea said, and I'm really glad to hear from Jenny. I'm like, I can't forget about you because I want to ask you something later, but if you could drop your email in the chat, that'd be good. But thank you for that. So that's as far as I think how you guys can do more. I think you're doing it already. Just expand it a little bit more. Maybe just grab one person out there that can help. And if you need a volunteer, I'll be happy to volunteer, connect with you guys, with whoever you guys need. I'm always down to get people connected. And then the other question was how to get men involved. So one time, I'm not a movie person, but I saw the movie 300, and the wife in the movie said, it is only women who give birth to men. And that resonated with me in its truth, that, you know, without, just like Glynis said, without women, there are no men. So I think if we always circle that idea around, that we're just one unified, I guess, synchrony of a soul, you know, yin and yang, we can complete the whole picture together with synergy and just create something much more than something individualized.
Thank you, Heather.
And the only thing, and I'm sorry, I have to hop off after this, but so first off, thank you all. I have learned so much from each and one of you, and thank God I printed this, because I'm like, I need to like read more about each of you. Like, I just want to, you know, connect with social media or whatever. But my thought on what Women in Philanthropy can do is, I saw, you know, on your webpage that you already do so much for the community. And so I was just thinking, how do we translate that information, all those resources that your agency offers and provides? Again, you know, with my work with the immigrant and refugee populations, I see that you offer workshops, seminars, mentors. I was saying, maybe if we can have like a bilingual mentor, again, how do we connect to these diverse populations so that we can attract, you know, a bilingual mentor to, you know, help people within their own community, but not only them, you know, anybody else. And again, getting the information and resources about, you know, there was something I saw about a micro loan program. And I thought, again, you don't have to speak English to start a business, but if you don't know where to go or how to start or how to get a loan, you know, it's really difficult. So if some of that information was somehow translated, or I don't know, maybe you have to pay someone to interpret, these seminars or workshops, that would be really useful for many of our community members in this area. So that's what I wanted to share. And again, thank you so much. This has been an amazing experience for me. I've learned so much from all of you, and thank you all for all of the work that you're doing in our community. Thank you. Thank you.
Jenny, really
Thank
fantastic.
you, Jenny.
Thank you. And congratulations on paying off your loans. So excited for you. Good night.
Thank you, Jenny. Great ideas, great solutions offered. As we are kind of wrapping up, right, Maggie?
Yep. So we're a little bit long, but I think the discussion has been fantastic, and I know a few people had to hop off, but the good thing is with this virtual format, we're able to record all of this, and so therefore, have all of this available to those who couldn't join us or those who had to leave us early. So I think just want to give the opportunity quick to Amber. I don't know if you had a chance or not to answer that final question, and then just want to thank you all so much for being on tonight.
Yeah, I think everyone covered it. Everyone just, honestly, I'm just so happy to have had the opportunity to be here with each and every one of you tonight, and I appreciate all that you're doing for the community and the Women in Philanthropy group, and Laura, everything you and Maggie and your team are doing is just outstanding. So thank you, truly.
Thank you, Amber. Thank you so much to our incredible panel tonight. I think it was a fantastic discussion. It could go on and on. That's how good it is. But I do want to make sure, we thank the panelists for your time. Thank you to all the WIP supporters who join us and continue to support this. As we know, this is the first of 2 webinars focused on civic engagement and advocacy. This is going to lay the groundwork for potential focus on civic engagement and advocacy. And then, in our next webinar, which will be on this theme, is on April 22nd, where we'll again dig more into the solutions based on what we heard tonight. So as a reminder, there's 6 total panel discussions. This is one of 6 in the Learning to Break Barriers webinar series. We're looking forward to your continued engagement in the discussions as we look to enhance the voices of women and girls and their families in our region. Again, thank you so much, and thank you for your continued support. Women in Philanthropy, and a great discussion tonight.